And back to today, we are talking player management. What is a player manager? What's their role? Who needs a manager? Surely in today's digital age, I don't need a manager. Surely an athlete can do it all. But if there's anyone in the food chain right now that is even more than necessary, that's an effective manager. It's your business partner, your planner, your campaigner. It's the person who connects the dots. But what does it take to be a successful player manager? And we're going to find out today, hopefully going to find out a lot of answers here. What's the difference between a manager and an agent? What are the revenue streams for players? And what are the tips for success between a player and manager? And also, what are the pitfalls to avoid? If you think you can do it yourself, then you don't have to watch this. But if you are interested to find out how to work with managers, then please stay on and meet with our two wonderful speakers. We have Roman de Somma, the head of international talent at CAA Sports, and we have Deepti Bopaiah, who's the CEO of GoSports Foundation. We're going to say hello. We're going to meet Deepti in a minute, but before that, we're going to go live and say hello to Roman. Roman, so CAA Sports, please tell us. Who are you? Where are you? Tell us about your role at CAA. And I think this is the question we love asking everyone. We know what you think you do for a living, but what does your family think you do for a living?
Hey, Jasper. Great to be here, and thanks for having me. And hello, everyone. So as you said, I'm the head of international talent at CAA Sports. What we mean by international talent is everything that we do with athletes outside of North America. It's under my responsibility. I've been at the company for 10 years, so I've seen the growth of our business from essentially what was a 5-people office to more of a 450 people business now in Europe. Of course, backed by the behemoth that is CAA Sports today. The biggest sports agency in the world, and at the moment I'm in Italy, traveling as always. That's kind of my lifestyle, and it has been for the past 10 years. And my parents and my friends, I mean, they think I travel from one party to the other and from one fancy location to the other. It's not exactly as it looks like. It's much busier and much more stressful than that. But yeah.
So when you say you work with these clients and stuff, so what's your actual role? What do you do? What does your day look like?
So I started my career as a sports agent. That's really what I was doing. So looking after, trying to sign new athletes and then representing these athletes. When I mean representing, I mean taking care of everything that happens off the field, making sure that they have the right playing contract, and then making sure that their business is maximized and run properly off the pitch, so that they can only focus on what matters to them, which is performing. I did that for many years. I'm still doing it for a few clients, and then from 2019 onwards, my responsibilities kind of grew a little bit within the business, and so now I manage our agents in Europe, and I make sure that our clients are looked after properly.
So you manage the managers?
Well, yeah, I manage the agents. I mean, there's a bit of a difference between an agent and a manager, which I know we will kind of dig deeper in a little bit. Agents, I mean, the way I see the agent in this kind of modern era of sports representation, the agent is a person out there in the market hunting for opportunities for his clients. So we don't necessarily have to deal with the day-to-day. For example, I didn't pay my car bill this month, or I forgot to pay the lease of my house, or I'm moving and I need a new house. That's not what we do. We think about business opportunities and essentially helping our clients maximizing their careers. There's a short window of time when a player or an athlete is generating income. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to help them maximize the income that they generate within this time window, and then create a platform that will outlast their playing career, that will support them after they stop playing.
Cool. So we'll come into, we're going to drill down into that, into both of those topics in a second. But just while we're talking about you and introducing you to the Academy audience, how did you get into the business, Roman, and what was your first big break?
I got into the business the only way, from the bottom. I've been in the sports world my whole life. I used to be an athlete, a professional athlete, and I started playing sport when I was 3 years old. And so when I decided, when I was 21, and I was thinking about what to do with the rest of my life, sports was the only answer. And I started as an assistant at CAA. So essentially, I hustled my way into the business, working for the person who used to have my role back then as his assistant. And my first break, I always say this to young people working for me, like, in this business, if you're good enough, you're old enough. So it doesn't really matter how old you are. What's important is what you bring to the table. And I think my first big break was 6 months after I started as an assistant. I found myself on a call with a brand, and at the time we were working with, we still do, but at the time we were starting this joint venture with a company based in Portugal, who was representing Cristiano Ronaldo, and we were essentially selling Cristiano and doing all these commercial deals. Of course, that wasn't my role. I was the assistant of the person who used to do it, but I happened to be on this call 6 months into my employment. And the good thing about this job is that, and I say this to young people all the time, is you are one phone call away from your big break. It doesn't matter if I'm the head of talent or if you're an assistant. When I get on the phone with somebody, I have the same chance as an assistant to make something happen. And so back then, I happened to be on this phone call, and the person on the other line asked me who I was, and I said, "Oh, I'm Cristiano Ronaldo's agent." And we built a relationship, and then a few months after, I received an offer for Cristiano to be the face of this big global campaign. So that was kind of, I put my name on the map with that. And again, it was about being fearless and I guess, making the most of any opportunities that come your way.
So if you're going to start big, start big. Start with one of the biggest football players of all time. We've talked about managers and agents. What is the difference between a manager and an agent?
So I think, manager and agent, it's not everyone's cup of tea, because I think not all the athletes really want both in their lives, and I always strongly advise each one of my clients to get both. And the reason for it is, a manager is the person that is with you every day, looking after the day-to-day, or every single need you have on a daily basis. For professional athletes, these needs are many, and the person who looks after you in that way. And also, the other thing I say about the manager is, a manager is your emotional compass. So he's the person that understands where an athlete is every day from an emotional standpoint, which is really, really important, and a mental standpoint. You can't do both, because if you do that, if you do what a manager does, you don't have the time to be out there trying to find new business opportunities for your clients. And so what I always say is, you need the manager to be with you on the road every day, and you need an agent who has the time and the mental capacity and the mental bandwidth to be out there hunting for you, thinking about, what, are you in the right place at the moment? Yes and no. What should we do? What's the next step? What's the strategy? What are the brand partners that we need to bring on board to tell your story? Are we doing everything we can to maximize your business? And so that's what an agent does. An agent builds the business around you, advises you on investments you have to make, and an agent needs to be everywhere all the time. That's why I travel every week, because my job is to be everywhere all the time, at the forefront, on the front line, understanding where the world is going. What are the new trends coming up? What are the new companies coming up? And should we be part of this trend? Should we not be part of this trend? That's my job. I cannot do my job if I have to think about what my client needs today. Has he paid the bills? Is he waking up in time to be at training? I can't be thinking about those things.
So one of them is like a parent. So the manager is like a parent, and the agent is much more commercially focused. And I mean, we've seen examples in our lives where parents manage their offspring, and that always has an interesting. But that's for a completely different subject. But final question, Roman, before we meet Deepti, and that's which kind of clients, can you name any of the clients you work with? Do we know any of your clients?
Sure. I mean, our clients are not secret. I mean, CAA is a big company and it's a big public-facing company. So I work mainly. My business is split between football or soccer and Formula One. I represent a retired world champion, Nico Rosberg, and an active driver, Daniel Ricciardo, and then a few football players, Rafael Varane, Manchester United, Son Heung-min, Tottenham Hotspurs, and a few others.
You had to mention Spurs, didn't you? Daniel Ricciardo has been to Sports Matters before, so please do invite him back. Roman, we're gonna say goodbye to you for about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna have the three of us having a chat. If there's anyone out there with questions, please get them into the chat boxes, and they'll be fed to me. But now we're going to go live to India. Deepti, thank you for being so patient. Very nice to meet you.
I learned a lot in that conversation.
So we're talking about mummies, daddies, and agents. But Deepti, same question for you. Please introduce yourself. Who are you? Where in the world are you? This really is a global session between three of us. Where are you in the world? And what do you do? Tell us a little bit more about GoSports and what do your family think you do?
Hi, Jasper. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Deepthi Bopaiah, and I'm in the south of India, in Bangalore. And very, very happy to be on this platform. And what we do, I am the CEO of GoSports Foundation. We are a not-for-profit setup, and we are attempting to create Olympians and Paralympians for India. That's what we do. We've been around for 13 years. We've been part of 50 Olympians and Paralympians, and we've had a great journey over the years. We've learned a lot, and everything that he said that they don't do, we do as a manager. So I think it's a great conversation that we're going to have. As an organization, we believe that there's a lot of talent. And just to put some perspective, we are more than 1 billion people in India, and we till very recently had only one Olympic gold medal, individual gold medal, which was really bothering all of us who loved sport, played sport, dreamt sport. And we really wanted to change that. But, winning an Olympic medal is not a 1 year, 2 year journey. It takes decades and decades to really get young talent to the top. And it's important to really put professional pathways in place for an athlete to focus and create an ecosystem around them to get to the best potential that they have and they come with or born with. So our job primarily is to really identify young talent across different sports that we work in and give them access to the best training, the facilities, guidance, nutrition, mental conditioning, sports science, the biomechanics, everything that they need to improve their performance to get to the next level. When you look at a base, you don't always end up winning a lot of medals, but there are a lot of athletes who do really well at different points in time. It could be the Commonwealth Games, it could be the Asian Games, it could be ultimately the Olympics and the Paralympics. So that's really what we do at GoSports. I am actually a former athlete myself. I played up to the state. I was a tennis player, and I also played basketball. Didn't pursue that at that point of time for different reasons. Maybe I just didn't have the talent to get beyond where I was, and it was also very, very expensive to pursue the sport. And in India, back in those days, you could not really say you're a professional athlete. Today, you can say I'm a badminton player, I'm a hockey player, I'm a tennis player. So I think sport is a lot, a topic that is discussed today, is accepted in the society in a much better way. So there's a lot of young people today who say, I want to be a football player, I want to be an Olympic champion, which has definitely changed. So I played sport growing up, thanks to my parents, my family. We had sport every single day of our life. Very fortunate to have that, and that's really my exposure to sport. Tennis, because my dad is a die-hard tennis fan, and my mom played, hockey, and my sister and me played team sports throughout growing up. So we were completely involved in sport, but then I kind of took education, went and did my MBA, and then was a banker. I was with HSBC for 6 years. The 2012 Olympics changed my life. That was my turning point in terms of really taking a call and getting out of banking and really doing something, because this whole narrative that we continue to have, that as Indians we can't win Olympic medals, that bothered me a lot. And I was like, what can I really do to change that? So that's, should I join a federation? Should I join a private organization? How does it really work? And that's when I came across GoSports Foundation. We were a very small setup at that point of time, with about 15 athletes and 3 people. I was the 4th employee at that point of time. We had a fantastic trustee board, who had a great vision of what they wanted to do. And that's when I joined in. This December, I finished a decade, Jasper. So it's been quite an amazing journey for me.
It's amazing. So I think you mentioned it before, but how many? So your clients are the players and the athletes, right? So
Yes.
So how many clients do you have?
We're now about 150 athletes.
Wow.
Yeah, we're 150 athletes across the age group of 13 right up to 45, because we also work with para athletes and some of them are slightly older. So we work with very, very different types of age groups, challenges, needs, requirements, medical requirements, physical requirements, mental requirements, performance requirements. So I think our attempt is to really try and create a support system around the athlete to get better in their performance. We do not coach athletes from a technical standpoint. We ensure that they get the right experts around them. So none of us in the team are really providing technical knowledge. That is not our domain. We are really being their managers and making sure that we take care of all their day-to-day stuff so that they can just focus on their sport and get to the best of their potential. So in some way, we're doing the job up to when Roman comes in, and then their organizations kind of take over to build that brand further and bring in opportunities. So our role is quite extensive. I mean, we are the extended family and the mommies and the daddies sometimes, because we get all types of calls, from teenagers. Fights with parents is something that we're dealing with sometimes. Fights with coaches or schools. With slightly older athletes, there are relationship kind of conflicts that come in, which can impact their sport. So we really are trying to address and ensure nothing gets in the way of their sport, and for their sport, whatever is needed from a biomechanic, nutrition, expertise standpoint, we make sure that that is there to take them to the next level. In the last few years, Jasper, the government also has come in and is playing a very, very important role. In India, it's called the Sports Authority of India, the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sport, and they have very, very different schemes where they pick up young talent and work, different pathways of support. But I think where private organizations like ours come in is the just-in-time support, because we're able to really turn around things. Something happens in the morning, by afternoon, an athlete manager's there physically, can take them, get it done. If there's an injury, get them to the best experts, get their x-rays, MRIs. So there's the turnaround times of just getting it done right on time is what we do. Given that we are a non-profit organization, we are dependent on funding from general public, from companies and corporates. And one of the most absolutely interesting facts is that India was one of the first countries in the world to mandate the corporate social responsibility in 2013. And one of the categories under that was sport. And training towards the Olympic, Paralympic, and rural sport became a category where corporates could put their money and could fund young athletes towards the Olympics and Paralympics. So for us as an organization, that's where we were able to really grow from that 20, 30, 50 athletes to about 150. And, by the end of the year, we're going to be 200 athletes across different programs. But that has happened because corporate India and our partners have come on board and understood that we're really attempting to do nation building through sport and create role models for India and eventually also win some medals. So that's what we do.
That's absolutely fantastic. Look, it's brilliant and good for you for really taking that on, and congratulations on your first decade. I think we're going to, when Roman comes back, we're going to talk about the credibility of sport as a career, and some parts of the world where it's really cool to work in sport, and other parts of the world where your parents just won't allow it, and so we can come back to that. But I think I'm very keen to understand that. Now you're more on the manager side and Roman's more on the agent side, but obviously you're all interested in where and how the athlete and the players get paid. What can you define as the main income stream? We talked about business. Roman mentioned a few times the words business opportunities. But what are the main income streams for athletes?
So for athletes over here, I think it's a combination of, if they perform well, they get jobs. And one of the most important things for our athletes here, I won't say all of them, but some of them come from extremely humble backgrounds, and sports becomes a pathway for a career, for livelihood, for eventually a job. So one of the income streams, if they do well in their sport, is they get into a job. Once they reach that certain age, they have their education in place and they're playing sport, they get jobs. Apart from that, they have scholarships in terms of what we offer. So our entire, the income in that sense for an athlete, in terms of where we utilize the funds that we get from corporates towards athletes, is given to them as a scholarship. So that's one of the income streams. Apart from that, today there are a lot of different brands who are interested in their journeys. There's a lot of different opportunities available for athletes to do commentary, to build their own social media profiles, to really try and attempt to generate funds, so income through different sources. But I think that happens after you achieve a certain kind of feat. Otherwise, it's not something that's going to just come in when you're a young or a junior athlete. You become an Olympian, and then maybe you have different brands and you have different content to show to generate income. But otherwise, it's a tough life for an athlete. There's not too many income streams. They're struggling most of the time to make it to the top. And sport is so brutal and so harsh that they could be the best at one age group, and then injury could, they could never play again. So our attempt is also to ensure that while athletes are training, they're also parallelly creating backups on their passions to live the life beyond their sport. Opportunities will come when you're right on the top, brand opportunities. But for majority of athletes, it's a very difficult life. And today, we're seeing that your careers don't span for 10, 15, 20, 25 years like before. You kind of have shorter careers and you're making it much younger. So today you have world champions at 16 and 17, and probably at 25, 28, 30, they'll be kind of completely done with the sport, right? So what happens for the rest of their lives? So that's where we also ensure that the athlete education piece comes in and kicks in, and they get access to different experts who talk to them about what else they can do, along with their sport. Obviously, you don't want to talk to a young athlete about retirement, but it is something that you try and get them thinking about, that you do have two lives, one while you're playing your sport and one beyond your sport. So I think it's a responsibility and one of the goals that we've taken at the foundation to really try and see how can you really build a strong athlete who can live in the real world, even beyond this sport, and be a champion at the same time?
Fantastic. Well, Deepti, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing these insights with us. And we're going to carry on talking to you, but we're also going to bring Roman back into the room. And there should be, by the power of the internet, there we go. The three of us are here. So we're live in India and Italy and Singapore. Thank you for coming back, Roman. I'll start with you here. Let's just go straight to the heart of this, and what advice can you give for young managers or agents to the players and athletes who think they can do it themselves, and what advice can you give? Maybe I approach you on the agent side, and then Deepti, for you, what advice can you give athletes about working with managers? But Roman first, what advice can you give to young people, athletes that want to work with managers, agents?
Young athletes. That's the question, right? Young athletes.
What's the advice?
Look, the one thing that I see all the time is, especially in soccer after the deregulation after 2015, is that you have a lot of family members, brothers and parents who want to be managers and athletes. The way I explain this to our clients is kind of along these lines. If you have a problem with your teeth, you go to a dentist. If you have a problem with the law, you go to a lawyer. If you have a problem with, if you want to get, if you want your house to look good, you go to an architect. You don't do it yourself. You don't ask your brother, you don't ask your father. So why would you give the management of your professional career to them? Unless they're qualified. Sometimes, first of all, they don't have the skills and don't have the know-how, because for the reason that I've just explained. And then the other problem is they're too emotionally involved in your life. And when you have too much emotion, making hard decisions and telling you, speaking the truth is hard. So you need somebody who is not that emotionally attached to you. So I think a father or brother who can help an athlete get to the professional stage is fantastic. And, having the family around you, surrounding you and protecting you is so important, because that love and that affection and that strength will stay with you throughout your entire life. But there's a moment when a father needs to sit on the stand and cheer for you, and the same goes for your brother. And you have to let professionals come in and do the job.
So leave it to the pros. Deepti, same question for you. What advice can you give young players or athletes who think they can do it themselves? Why do they need a manager?
Yeah, I think it's a very similar, answer. But in athlete management, I think it's very difficult for you to manage your day-to-day stuff and think of your sport. And you're exhausted physically because you've gone into training, and then you want to come back, and then you want to send your emails, or you want to plan this, this tournament you want to go to, and you have to plan the accommodation, and you have to book your flights, and then you have to do a lot of those things, especially from your tournament calendar perspective. Not for events, but when you know that, okay, Commonwealth Games is coming, I need to be here, I need to be in this country, I have my qualification event. You have the entire calendar planned, and to do that, you actually end up wasting so much of your time planning your schedules. Talking to your experts, talking to your nutritionist, talking to your sports science expert. Your fitness trainer will not talk to your coach. Your coach will then say, go and tell your nutritionist to do this. They need to, you're getting so tired all the time. So how do so making sure that everybody is having the conversation and everybody's on the same page, you need a manager. But my advice really on the other side is to people who want to become a manager. It's a very difficult, thankless job, right? Because you are doing this at any point. We've had athletes who get stuck at 3 a.m. Their luggage is not arrived. They will call you and say, I have a match in the morning. My luggage is not arrived. Can you help me? Right. And then you're again up back trying to help them with that. Obviously, in India, we have a system with the government and everybody else who's also there. But I think the relationship gets built with the athlete manager. And he or she is the one who's really the first point of contact to the athlete when they get stuck in any sort of crisis. In fact, just before the Tokyo Olympics, I had one of the athletes called her athlete manager up and called me up at 3 a.m. and was just crying, just crying. And unfortunately, she was in another country and she got the news that her dad had passed away. And it was so, to get the first call, you obviously know you've built a great relationship, but then what do you do after that? And I think for us, we are very emotionally invested in the athlete. It's when you're doing a deal for the athlete, you obviously need to see the business side of it, and you need to see whether it makes business sense, and from a brand and reputation standpoint, does it make sense or not? But for us, the kind of aspects that we're dealing with is very, very personal to the athlete. So you just need to be available, all the time. So every time I'm hiring an athlete manager, I keep telling them this is a thankless job. It's a 24 hours job. They will be there for you, and you'll get the validation and you'll get your recognition at a very different time. But for the first 3-4 years, you will not see any sort of recognition or reward in that sense, right? So you should really want to work with that particular athlete. So I think every athlete should attempt to look at finding an athlete manager and a talent manager or an agent, primarily because they're two separate needs. They both save your time so that you can focus on your game, and that's what you should be doing and nothing else.
Roman's nodding a lot while you were saying that. There's a question. We have our first question from the World Wide Web, and thank you to Naren. Now, if I get your surname wrong, I do apologize, but I think it's Naren Devia. Question for Roman. Getting into the elite management, athlete representation and management agencies is surely challenging. What would you suggest are the best ways to try and get into this field and agencies? Is it about networking? Now, this is, you started as an intern yourself, right?
Yeah, yes, I did, and my path was, sending as many emails as I could, and then when I got into the room with the right person, I told him that I would rather park cars and make coffees than work anywhere else. I don't think he believed what I said, and then a month later, I came back and I repeated the same. My advice is, look, first, if you can, start young, because this business, it's all about relationships, and there is nothing that you can fake and fast track a lot of things in life, but not relationships. So if you start young, you have more time in front of you. If you cannot start young, then I would say check your ego out of the door and find a way to start, even if it means taking a pay cut or taking a downgrade on your current position in another industry, because there's only one way to learn in this business, and it's by absorbing from somebody who knows how to do the job, and also standing on, I say this all the time, standing on the shoulders of giants. People in every industry, but in this industry in particular, when you make it and you sign with your first client, you think you know it all and you can do it on your own. Like, you can't. I'm 36, and by no means I would have been able to achieve what I've achieved if I didn't, if I didn't learn, or if I wasn't supported by some amazing people in a huge organization like CAA. So I think that's very important to keep in mind. The problem is, and I would just add one thing that you said before about the manager becoming almost like a little brother or a parent. One big problem with this industry is that the more time you spend with athletes and talent in general, the more you start thinking that you are also a talent. And I remember when I was very, very young, one of the first trips abroad that I took was with this very famous footballer called Andriy Shevchenko. And he was one of my first clients. I was doing commercial work for him. And I went, and I was coming from my professional athlete career. So I was ego, I was big ego
One
kind
of
of
those.
presence. And yeah. And I remember we were out for dinner one night and he told me, he said, look, if you want to be an agent, you want to be, obviously you want to be an agent and you want to be successful. I said, okay. I said, yeah, I do. And he said, well, remember that if you want to be an agent and if you want to do this well, you're always going to be number two, which means, it was his very subtle and politically correct way of saying, your ego doesn't really fit well with this career path. So it's a hard balance. It's a very hard balance to manage.
Fantastic. It was a good question, Darren. And I think Deepti, I've got a question here from Gina. What has been the biggest challenge in your career thus far, and what's your proudest moment? Nice question.
I think lots of different proud moments. I think just ensuring that we had India's first fencer, actually, Bhavani Devi, who made it to the Olympics. We've been told in India that who even knows fencing? What is fencing as a sport? And over the last 8 years, we worked with this girl and put in all our time, effort, energy, resources, and got India's first fencer at the Olympics. I think that was a very, very proud moment for us. And very recently, about 3 weeks ago, we had the Thomas Cup that India, for the first time won, and 5 out of the 6 boys over there are athletes that we've supported and literally picked when they were 15, 16 years old, and today, they've brought in that glory. So I have a lot of very big proud moments. I can't really put that, but I think challenging time has always been twofold for us. I think for me personally, moving out of a banking setup, completely secure setup, doing really well as a, we in banks you have fancy designations, but I was one of the youngest vice presidents of HSBC in the wealth management space. Moving out of that, at that age when you're just trying to make a career into something, which Roman also said, you may not make the money, you may not have everything in place, but if you believe that's where you want to be, you have to make it happen. You have to start somewhere and you have to take those difficult steps. So I think that was a big challenge, but today when I look back, I think that was one of the best decisions that I made for myself, and feel very humbled and proud of what we've achieved. So yeah.
Good for you. Good for you. We've had a very nice comment. It's not a question, but kudos to Roman and Deepti for giving a great insight into athlete management and the ecosystem from Brigadier Balwinder Singh Sandhu. Thank you, Brigadier Balwinder. Okay, so another question here. Let's start with Roman. For either when you are managing multiple athletes in different sports, what are the challenges you face as a manager or agent? And how do you prioritize where you spend your time and resources? That is from the show's producer, from Nipuna.
I think that is a very good question. So I think for a manager, I think it's very, very hard to manage multiple athletes because of the nature of the job and the time. We have 24 hours each day, and we also sleep a portion for a portion of that. So I don't think, in my experience, I don't think it's possible to manage multiple athletes. With regards to time management, look, I mean, I think time management is probably one of the most important skills that you have to learn throughout your career. If you can do it well, I think it's also one of the most rewarding thing about this career path, because one of the most beautiful things and one of the most motivating things for me personally which, by the way, I think it's the number one reason that kept me into this industry for so long, is the fact that every day you can wear multiple hats. And every year as your career develops, your responsibilities change and develop and transition from one sport to another, or from a group of athletes to another, or from one specific area of the business to another. And it's a beautiful thing, because at the end of the day, everything connects. The reason why I ended up representing Daniel is because one of the reasons, I guess, it's because I spent a few years also servicing Rebel Racing, which was an account and a client of CAA, a long-standing client of CAA, which is how I met Daniel, which is how I got really close to the sport of Formula One. And so I think that's kind of a very important thing, very important element of anyone's career in this industry. But back to the question, time management. I think every person and every executive has his own method. The way I did it, especially at the beginning of my career, was to micromanage my calendar. Just to give some concrete advice, I would put in my calendar every day specific, blocking specific time windows, and associate to a specific activity a different color. So, I would remind myself to reach out to brands every day, and I would give that slot a yellow color. I would remind myself to look after a specific piece of the business of a group of clients. I would give it another color, or manage my team, or manage the people who work for me. I will give another color. This is something that I still do. I remind myself, for example, every week to check in with every person who works for me, because I think for me, when I was growing into the business, being able and feel the support of people above me was critical, still is. And so I try to remind myself of doing the same with people who work for me. And unless you impose yourself and you treat that as a commitment in your calendar, it's easy to forget about it. So I guess self-discipline is probably the right word.
Fantastic. So Deepti, we have a question here. Wimbo, what a great name. Wimbo from Indonesia. Deepti's story has inspired me so much. India and Indonesia have very similar situations, but I think currently India is more advanced in sports. My question to Deepti, how to raise athletes' awareness that they need someone to manage their sporting career and welfare instead of relying on officials. And that's from Johan Wimbo Satwiko, who is on the Indonesian Olympic Committee. Thank you, Johan, for joining in. Deepti.
Thank you, Johan, for your question. I think for all athletes, it is about awareness and education. A lot of things we expect athletes to know when they, suddenly start performing well. You expect them to give a good press conference. You expect them to handle things well, but that's not just going to happen on its own. It's a lot of grooming. It's a lot of discussions. It's a lot of planning, and that's where we, at GoSports Foundation, we call it our athlete education vertical. It's a very critical vertical because you're preparing young athletes to face the real world. So do mock interviews, give them the awareness, then give them a problem, ask them to fill up a particular form. How are they going to submit this email? And then they'll start realizing the number of things based on their age group of what all has to get done. I think for a lot of athletes, parents double up and keep doing that most of the time, or some family member, or a distant relative comes in and is doing it. And I think that's where even when they become big, when they become Olympians or Paralympians, they still want to continue that same format, because at the early days it is somebody in the family doing it for them, which is all basic things, right? So I personally feel for an athlete to be ready to really face the world in any way, whether it's on court, off court, you need to prepare them, just like how we prepare our doctors and engineers over a period of time before they're put into, into the world in their profession. You need to be able to do that the same way. So I think from a federation standpoint, doing these sessions, tying up with different organized, like for example, we were actually the knowledge partners to the BCCI, which is the largest, cricketing federation, one of the largest cricketing federations in the world. And this was a continuous problem that they faced, where how do you teach the under 19 boys and the women's cricket team and the men's cricket team? How do you really get them to engage and be prepared to answer questions from the press, what to take, what not to take, building self-confidence, teamwork? So we actually put together the entire set of workshops for BCCI, and we've seen the results in terms of how they approach questions, how they're able to answer, and that takes a lot of work and effort. It's not going to happen overnight. So I think it should be part of the talent development plan that every federation has.
Brilliant. Now we've got a question. So this question's been asked for you, Deepti, but I'm going to pass it to Roman because I think it's more in his space. But what do brands or corporates mostly look into to support or endorse, to have athletes endorse them? So and that's from Aravuna Paul. Let's get this. What do brands and corporates look for in an athlete?
I think, talking about real facts, they need territorial relevance, so geographical relevance. They need a relevance within their target demographic, and they need kind of an alignment of core values with what is the brand equity. In most cases, when we talk about kind of top tier athletes, brands use athletes as ambassadors for their brands so that they can build a stronger connection with their target customers. That's really the key. And so you need to make sure that an athlete, is relevant and has a following that is a good fit with your target customers. Those people who follow your athletes or support your athletes needs to be in the target age brackets, for example. And territorial relevance, is that athlete relevant in that specific territory? I mean, Deepti is probably our kind of the two of us can probably provide perfect examples here because I guess a cricket player in India is probably the number one target of big brands, whereas that might not be the same. That might not be the same for a brand who wants to market in Europe. So it is all about relevance within the target customers. It's not different from a media buy in a way.
Cool.
I just wanted to add one point to that. Sorry, just one point, because when we're talking about supporting athletes, and since we spoke about the relevance, right? Territorial relevance is one aspect, but also in terms of endorsements and sponsorships, at least in India, cricket is the number one sport. So a lot of the other sports are not even being considered, even though there are champions. But we, recently had a gold medalist, Neeraj Chopra, in javelin, and then all brands are after him today, right? So I think it's also timing, relevance, and what kind of engagement the brand can get beyond just that particular region. We've seen that happen. But yeah, absolutely bang on in terms of what Roman said. It has to make sense for the brand. Otherwise, they're not going to, no matter how big or great the athlete is, they're not going to put their money behind it.
Fantastic. So look, we've got lots of more questions that I'd love to ask, but I know that we're running short on time. So I'm going to ask two more questions. The first one is a look into the future. There's a lot of talk about crypto and NFTs and what have you. Roman, is there anything that you or CAA in general are advising about the whole Web3 and blockchain world. And the reason I'm asking that is because shamelessly, All That Matters is going to be talking a lot about Web3 in September live in Singapore, but very keen to understand what advice you're giving your players.
The way we're looking, I mean, we are at the forefront of this industry. You know, we're heavily invested in this industry in terms of, you know, partnerships that we have brokered and advised some of our clients on. I mean, I guess the key thing for me has been finding the right business, finding solid businesses with really good management, and a solid business plan and a solid vision and good backing. You know, I'm not in a position to give any advice in terms of financial advice or things like this on the cryptocurrency industry as a whole, but you know, cryptocurrencies and Web3 in general are, as I said, at the forefront of the innovation at the moment. And you know, it's like every other sector. You know, we saw the same with poker years ago. It's a very competitive sector. It's very lucrative, and so all these companies want to spend a lot of money to push their brand out there. You need to have the right people around you that can do the right type of due diligence and tell you which businesses are going to be here after the storm hits. And I don't know if, you know, some of you guys in the audience follow the cryptocurrency markets. We are in the middle of the storm right now, and you know, the businesses that will make it through this storm are probably going to be the businesses that will innovate the most in the Web3 space. At least that's the way we are looking at it. So you need to back the right horse. That's kind of the way we look at it.
Nice answer. So final question for both of you. We'll start with you, Deepti. Aside to everything we're talking about today, it doesn't matter about player management, the context of this, what's really exciting for Deepti right now?
Two things. One is obviously we're very close to Commonwealth Games, and we're very excited about you know, how our athletes are going to do over there. Secondly, I actually won a fellowship to Oxford for 3 months, so it's a Chevening Gurukul fellowship. So I'm off in September. So I'm very excited about that.
But that means you'll have to cancel it because you have to come to All That Matters in Singapore instead. You forget your fellowship. Well, congratulations. That sounds wonderful. And Roman, what's exciting for you other than having to drop off in 2 minutes?
No, I mean, I was really, I really enjoyed this conversation, guys. I think what's exciting for me, I'm really excited for the World Cup at the end of this year, and I'm also really excited, you know, for the Formula One season. I think the sport is on a steep rise, and so I'm excited to be part of this sport and for as long as I can, you know, and so these are the two things that are on my horizon at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, as ever, I've written a lot of notes here, and thank you so much to both of you for joining us. But we talked about the difference between an agent and a manager. The manager is your parent, the agent is your commercial partner. You're always one call away from a big break. I love that thing there. The idea of getting into the business, be fearless. The manager needs to be with you day to day to be your emotional support and mental standpoint. You said. Brands, leave it to the pros. Don't do it yourself. It's a thankless task sometimes, though. Believe in the athlete if you're going to be their agent or their manager. Don't be afraid to start at the beginning. Be prepared to fail. Wear multiple hats. Make everyone connect. Have a solid business plan. I think the one that I've put in green in highlight is it's all about relationships. And so really build those relationships. So with that, Roman and Deepti, thank you so much for joining us at the Sports Planners Academy. Great conversation. And hopefully see at least one of you in Singapore in September if the other one's doing something selfish at Oxford. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thanks so much.
We will be back, I think, next week with our legal matters session on everything to do with sports law. So look out for those dates. And then the following week, I think on the 28th of June, we're going into the metaverse, and we're looking at how sport is playing in the metaverse and how virtual sports are playing in the metaverse, and so, or playing virtual sports are playing in the real verse. So we are going to we'll be back with that. So again, thank you so much to our two speakers. Thank you very much to our sponsors, all our partners, and thank you to you for sending those wonderful questions in as well from all over the world. So we will see you soon.